Hello, everyone. My name is Mia. I am a winter naturalist at ACES. Each winter, ACES partners with Wilderness Workshop and Roaring Fork Audubon to co-host Naturalist Nights, a free speaker series featuring experts who explore different topics relating to the natural world. We would like to thank our generous sponsors that help make Naturalist Nights a success. Our gold level sponsors are Garfield and Hecht, Reese Henry, and Ken Ransford. This presentation is being filmed and will be available on Wilderness Workshop and ACES YouTube channels. And now I'm excited to introduce tonight's speaker, Auden Schendler. Auden is the Senior Vice President of Sustainability at Aspen One, where he has been blazing the trail for real action through corporate sustainability for 25 years. I know him as the incredible speaker who came to our naturalist trainings and has inspired over 25 years of naturalists to look at our jobs in a new light. The perspectives he shares are often years ahead of their time and spark meaningful conversations among staff for days after he visits. Whether it's his son's gnome-related fame or the thought behind SkiCo's latest sustainability campaign. He is the author of the book Getting Green Done, and new this year, his book we are here to learn about today is Terrible Beauty, Reckoning with Climate Complicity and Rediscovering Our Soul. Please remember to hold questions until the end of the presentation when we will have a brief Q&A session. Thank you, and please welcome Auden Schendler.
Thank you. Wow, what a good intro. That was well done. Normally it's like you did this, you did this, you did this. That was very personal and excellent. So first, thank you, ACES. When a crowd shows up, I always say, it's not me, it's the organizer of the event. And we did an event last night in Carbondale, and there were 170 people. So thanks to Wilderness Workshop, thanks to ACES, the library agreed to host it, and they said, but you can't sell books in the library. And I was like, why? I don't understand. It was a county rule. And then they changed the rule today. But they changed it too late for me to bring a lot of books. So we have some books back there, which we will sell if you can use Venmo. But explore your local privately owned bookstore is amazing, and they have a bunch of the books. And that's a preferred place for you to get them. Also, how many people saw this talk last night? Ruthie, I see that you showed up and you came again. Now, I can't believe you would put yourself through this. But ACES, how many of you ACES people saw it last night? Not that many. Okay, so I don't have to, what I did is I changed it a little bit because I was boring myself with a story I'd told many times. So I'm going to emphasize some different stuff, but we'll have time for Q&A. It's also shorter than last night. Okay. I want to show you this video I took of my son when he was 8 years old, chopping wood in the backyard. And I want you to look closely at his face when he hits the round. And all of you being Coloradoans and being here in Aspen, you've all chopped wood, and you know the glory of what he's trying to do. He's trying to hit the round. He's trying to effortlessly use the axe. So not a lot of power, but just the weight of the axe, and hit the round perfectly. So with almost no effort, it cleaves perfectly. You know this act. And you'll also notice that I have a water retention system that I capture water off my roof and drain it into the front of my house to water my lawn. And you'll notice that he doesn't cut the hose. So that was awesome. And then he doesn't cut his foot off or lose a toe because I worked on that with him. I'll have more to say about this, but please watch his face when he hits the round. So everyone instantly knew what that was. And what it was the first time you tried Frosted Flakes, that look. the first time you rode on a carousel. That is human thriving, what you just saw. Because what's happening in this picture is you've got a kid who's healthy in a stable environment with at the time, well, it wasn't a stable climate then, but pretend it was. With a stable government, which has changed, but living a life where he can do things like this that carry on culture and history. He learned this from his father, who learned it from his father. And the axe he's using looks pretty modern. It's got a polyurethane handle. But that's because I broke the old hickory handle when I missed around and hit the shaft of the axe. And that axe was my grandfather's axe, and I found it in his garage in North Dakota. And so that axe is 200 years old. And axes themselves are thousands of years old. 7,000 years ago, they were used as currency. They were used as a way to store value. So somebody handed me a bunch of coins to pay for the book Annalise did. And I was like, what? Who does that? Like, who traffics in coin anymore? But it was as if that person had handed me an axe. You know, it's like, will you take this and barter? So I took this video just randomly, and then I was looking at it, and I looked at his expression, and I thought, we talk a lot in my field sustainability, and we're like, what is sustainability? And it's ridiculous. We worry it to death. And this is what sustainability is. This is human thriving. And Aristotle had a word for it that you've heard, eudaimonia. It's human flourishing. And the problem with that beautiful video is that it takes place in this context. This is a map. It's a NOAA map that looks at soil moisture content in 2095. And the dark brown is soil moisture equivalent to that of the Dust Bowl. So if you thought that immigration was an issue in the news today, imagine when there's no water in Central America and Mexico. Look at the Southwest where we all live. Look at Colorado, where Elias will be, what he used to say, an old little man. In 2095, he'll be 88. And so he'll be in this landscape. And this is dissonant. The beauty of that video I just showed you juxtaposed against the true horror of this slide. And it's this kind of thinking that got me to the title of my book, which is called Terrible Beauty. This is terrible beauty. Obviously, that slide is profound, the video is profoundly beautiful, but it's terrible too, because he's doomed in a certain way, and we're all doomed. This thing we love so much, this nature, this beautiful world, this child. And one of the best expressions of this is the great Bob Dylan. In Carbondale last night, I was like, 100% of you hippies know Bob Dylan. Here it's probably like 80%. But you know what I'm talking about. He won the Nobel Prize for a reason. And this song, Tomorrow's a Long Time, if you haven't heard it, Google it. Get it on Spotify. It's amazing. The lyrics are incredible. This line is, I can't hear the echo of my footsteps or remember the sound of my own name. And what he's talking about there is pure alienation. And this is the stuff of Springsteen. A lot of Springsteen's early work was about alienation from society. But that's what you feel when you juxtapose these things. And so my book is trying to reconcile the fact that when you ask people, you say, hey, do you have a minute? Yeah. What do you care about as a person? And people say, that's easy. I care about my kids, my family, my community. I care about the natural world and the places I visit. And then you say, that's awesome. What are you doing to protect that against a threat to all of it in the form of climate change? And through action, if not words, people say, nothing. I don't even vote. Like a majority of Americans, I think, in the last election didn't vote. And even if they did, it was, at best we hit 60%. And then what are you doing? Well, I'm working on my house. I'm going to make my house. Okay, is fixing your house going to solve the climate problem? No, it's not. So that dissonance between what we profoundly love and our actions to protect it is what I'm trying to address in this book. The problem with climate change is that it puts us into a survival society where we don't get to do the things that make us thrive. And this is a picture that you could look at. You could just Google any climate catastrophe from the last decade. This was Germany last year, but you don't have to go far. California today. And when you look at the expression on this woman's face, what she's expressing is not just that she has to clean up this horrific mess, but that everything she knew is gone, and it will take years and years to recover from it, and then you'll probably get hit by another flood. And that's this extreme problem with climate, which is that the things that make us great as people are the things that seem superfluous. And Aspen's this perfect place to be talking about this, because I'm the Enviro guy, so the first question last night, I'm the Enviro guy at a ski resort. First question last night was some jackass who basically said, how can you even talk about this? People fly private jets into Aspen. And I didn't answer, do you think I haven't heard that question before? Like, you think you're Mr. Original asking me that? It was so annoying, but and I can answer that if you want later. But the vision of Aspen as a ski resort was not that you be able to spray champagne on each other at Cloud 9, right? You all know that. The vision of Pepke, Walter and Elizabeth Pepke, was that you'd come to this place that was so beautiful that you were outside your usual life. And we could present you with what I'm doing right now as part of the Pepke vision, which is I'm going to present climate science to you. But you'll also be exposed to art on your ski pass. And you'll be exposed to culture in the form of music. And there's science in the physics center. And you would go off into the world to improve the world. And that wasn't maybe that will happen. Pepke said that was the intent. That was the intent of the Aspen Institute. And so he recognized that skiing, and we should recognize, skiing isn't a luxury. It's an example, just an example of how humans need leisure in some form, a break, a pause, an opportunity to rethink your life and to move society forward. And this isn't a rich white guy thing either. All societies where you're above subsistence, you need to be able to live a life that isn't just survival. You need to be able to walk to the pond. You need a pause, a mini break in your day, go to a park. And so these are the things that are threatened. I have like a 20-minute story about my son's gnome collection. I'm not going to tell that tonight. But the goofiness of it, we had like at peak maybe 150 gnomes, garden gnomes. And I want to tell the story, but the goofiness of this is human thriving, the silliness, and they tell the story typically because you all have a story like that. And in order to be able to tell a story about your son's gnome collection, you can't be living a life like The Road, Cormac McCarthy's book, where you're just trying to get by. And the problem with climate is that it turns us into that world. You don't get this opportunity. This is my daughter, and she got a cowbell signed by Lindsey Vonn. Is there any more Aspen thing that I could put up there? Okay, so we're in this world where this is a NASA map of temperature anomaly in April 2024, but you could pick any date. April was hot, but then the next month was hotter. And you'll see the scale is 6.2 on the right, anomaly, that's in degrees Celsius, so it's more than 10 Fahrenheit, more than 11 Fahrenheit. And it's an absolutely terrifying map, and one of the characteristics of this talk is each map I could spend the whole evening on, so I'll try not to do that. But the north is warming disproportionately, and that's where, it's not that it's a little warmer that scares scientists, it's positive feedback loops. So what's a positive feedback loop? All across the Arctic, there's methane, a greenhouse gas 84 times more potent than CO2, that's frozen into the tundra. Well, you heat it up, it vents to atmosphere, heats the planet, gets warmer, vents more methane. That's a positive feedback loop. Another is, it's white in the Arctic. If you melt the white ocean ice and it becomes black, it's like wearing a black t-shirt on a sunny day instead of a white t-shirt. Bad idea, you get very hot. Positive feedback loop. Third feedback loop, northern forests, heat up, die, burn, release carbon, make it warmer. So this is a scary slide. And it looks scary, but it's scarier the more you know about it. And the problem with climate today, so the Paris Accords said 1.5 Celsius warming over pre-industrial times. That's we should be able to survive, like that's the difference between adaptability and catastrophe. Well, we're gonna blow past 1.5. We're gonna blow past 2. Climate model, very good climate models through a group called Climate Interactive that you should check out if you're interested in doing a model on your own, say 3.3 Celsius by end of century, but we keep accelerating emissions. So it's very possible we'll hit 4 Celsius. Kevin Anderson, who used to run the Tyndall Center on Climate in England, he's a climate scientist, he said this about 4C warming. And here comes science speak, which I will then translate for you. He said, 4 Celsius warming is incompatible with a global organized community. And I heard that and I was like, oh my God, can't you speak English? So how do we translate it? And I don't have my slide. Wait, my next slide, okay, I rejiggered these to keep myself entertained. The next slide was a picture of Mad Max, the movie, with guys like tied to a truck out in the desert. Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome, is a global disorganized society. And it's when things start to break down. It's the map I showed you. If you thought oil was a political problem, think about when water's scarce. And that's what you end up in this situation as a result of 4 degrees warming. So this is a picture Pete McBride took from his porch during the fire in 2018. And that thing is dropping slurry just above my house. The town almost burned down. We took Elias. I was like, town's not gonna burn down. We're gonna go on a river trip. So and I've never lived this down in my family. We were on the Roaring Fork and Ellen was like, looks like the town's burning down. So we came back, we had to drop Elias on a friend's porch because he didn't want to see his town burn down. So we go up to the street and grab our stuff and escape. And it only took $40 million worth of slurry to stop that thing. $40 million, 40 tanker drops. And there's firefighters, some of whom are in the community. Matt Ross was on the hill. He was one of them. His boots melted. And I said, Matt, thanks for saving my house. It's free beers on me anytime I ever see you in the bar for the rest of your life. And he said, okay, but I didn't save the town. The tanker drops did. So just think about $40 million. That's your tax money. What do you want to do with $40 million? A tenured teacher in Basalt, who's been there 20 years and is one of the best teachers I've encountered, makes about $60,000. You want to pay teachers? Great. Do you care about roads? Spend the money on roads. What could you do with $40 million? ACES, what could you guys do with it? What can we pay people with? $40 million. Are you religious? Well, fund your church. I don't care what you do with it. It's your money. But instead, we dumped it on Basalt Mountain, and in 3 years, we're going to do it again. And in Germany, we're doing it again. And in California, the insurance industry is going to bail out of the state. And it may end in fire insurance in the United States entirely. Like the scale of what's going on in California, it's like Aspen burned down entirely. Think of the value there times what, 100? So have you tried to get fire insurance for your new condo in Snowmass recently? Or have you talked to anyone? You can't get it. It's difficult. Progressive. You see ads on the football stations. And you apply to Progressive, which I did, and they're like, we're not going to insure your house. What are you, crazy? So this is not a way for a society to thrive. And so if we care about, the question we're asking is, what's the price of this? What are the things we have to do? And I come from the corporate sector. So I want to tell you what corporations have done and why they're totally missing the boat. But what I'm going to be describing is modern environmentalism. Okay, so in corporations, CEOs and leaders, every Fortune 500 company has a statement. We care about climate. We've committed to reduce our emissions by 30%, by 20, whatever. And you say to the CEO, so what are you doing? And this was us. This was Aspen at the beginning of my career. Well, we're changing our light bulbs. And we're going to reduce our emissions 30%. And I know this work intimately. If you're a business and you cut your energy use 30%, you're Shazam. It's so difficult. But if you do that, and if you cut your carbon footprint by whatever, which is the goal of all these corporations, and then you go to the CEO and you say, well, so let me get this straight. You care about climate, yes, CEO says, and your climate plan is that you're going to reduce your emissions 30% and change a bunch of light bulbs, yes. Let me ask you one question, CEO. Is that going to stop climate change, a global systems problem that no one else is following you on through an act that's entirely voluntary, and we have to cut emissions 100% by 2050, and you're committing to 2030, and you didn't meet your target last year? So CEO, is that going to solve climate change? No. Okay, so just to be clear, you care about climate, and your climate plan doesn't solve climate change. That's American environmentalism. That's corporate sustainability. Every single one, with almost no exceptions, are saying the same thing. That's a problem. What are those things? Well, you know that corporate social responsibility, environmental and social governance, those are words, like all acronyms, designed to make you think you don't know that much, and the person who wrote them think they're smart and know something. Those don't mean anything. They mean just what I've said. You've set carbon targets. You've certified to third-party standards. You've produced a report. Okay, so far in my list, no emissions have gone down. You've bought phony carbon offsets. No emissions have gone down. You've committed to operational greening. That's voluntary. No major change in society has happened through voluntary action. Modern environmentalism and this stuff, it's literally like saying, at 1950, hey, we've got a race problem in the United States, and here's how we're going to solve it. Could everyone just be nicer to each other, please? That's it. That's literally what we've done in corporate sustainability. And of course, to solve civil rights, which we still haven't solved, we needed legislation, we needed Lyndon Johnson, we needed protests on the street. Okay, so here's a list of the stuff that I've spent a lot of my career doing. Riding my bike one day during lunch, out of my office in Basalt, I thought, I'm going to do a thought experiment. I want to make a list. I want to pretend I'm the fossil fuel industry. And I'm going to make a list of all the things the fossil fuel industry would want me to do as a corporate leader to make it seem like I was making progress on environment and really cared, but do nothing to threaten their ability to monetize the $33 trillion of remaining fossil reserves in the ground. And the reason I'm making this list is because they want me to do that because corporations are incredibly powerful. What if the CEO of Apple tomorrow wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying we need federal legislation on climate? A lot of other businesses would follow. But Tim Cook has not done that. And Apple, a great company that's admired by hundreds of thousands and millions of people, is only focused on operational greening. They'll say, oh, we're doing stuff in Washington too, but they never talk about it, and that's a social norm. So I made the list, and here's the list. And the astute people in the audience, this being one of the most overeducated counties in the United States, will be able to determine that the two lists are identical. So I'm riding my bike and this word kept popping into my head, complicity. And I'm like, what's happening? Why is this word coming into my head? And I thought, oh my God, all the work that I've done and that corporate sustainability does, and frankly, modern environmentalism, take blame for the problem. That's another thing. Hey, it's our fault. We use fossil fuels too. Even though we did not create the fossil fuel system, we asked for the services energy provides. We didn't say, could you do that in a way that would eventually destroy civilization? We didn't say that. We said we want it affordably. And by 1950, we knew that the impact of CO2 needed to be addressed. Okay, so then I thought, let's do another thought experiment. You should go on a bike ride with me. It's incredible. I'm going to do a thought experiment where I say, well, what is the scary stuff to the fossil fuel industry? What do they fear? And the answer is they fear businesses and individuals wielding power. And if you think about it, a lot of us, like in America today, we say, we don't know how to do change. We don't know how to change our government. We don't know how to do a revolution. But honestly, if you think about what human beings innately do really well, other than eat and live and breathe, we know how to do revolution. That's our history. We've done it over and over and over again, and we've done it recently. We've done it on civil rights. We've done it on gay marriage. We've done it on marijuana legalization. This is big social change. Maybe those aren't revolutions, but we know how to do it. Corporations fear that kind of thing. They fear social movements. They fear voice. They fear what I call, the generic term would be power wielding from a corporation. So a lot of what I'm going to give you examples of now is our company and me trying to say, what if a company like Aspen actually cared about climate? What are the things we would do? And when I present these things, I'm not saying, look how great we are and how we won. We obviously failed here, and we're failing, but we're going to keep chipping away, and this is an attempt to understand power wielding. So let's think, I'm going to start small and get bigger and bigger. So if you're like, that's ridiculous, that's because I'm starting small and getting bigger and bigger. So early in my career, I got a lot of criticism for working at a ski resort as a sustainability guy. And I thought, yeah, this sucks. I'm sick of this. I'm going to go to Bangladesh and help build treadle pumps for farmers and help people out. And then I thought on another bike ride, well, what would that do? And I thought, it would make me feel better about myself and people would stop criticizing me. That'd be nice. But then I thought, actually in Aspen, it's a center of power. I've got access to all that power. And so even though I'm getting criticized, I should probably do what I can to try to get after that and influence the people who come here, because you all know the kind of people who come here. And by the way, not just the rich people, but the citizens, because it's a throughput machine. We have 1.4 million skier visits a year, or more than that. So we said, we have these awesome map links that have a captive audience. So one of our early ones, you can't see it, but it's a graph of climate over the last 250,000 years. So you're not going to look at that normally. But if you're stuck on the lift, you'll be like, man, I'm so bored. And your phone, you don't want to get your phone wet and it's snowing and you're like, oh, look at the atmosphere. CO2 tracks perfectly with temperature. That's crazy. So then we said, we're going to get more sophisticated about this. And we said, what would be the message you wanted to deliver if you could only say one thing on the lift? So we called the Yale Program on Climate Communications, and they said, you should quote Pope Francis, because 70% of people respect this guy. You have a lot of South American visitors, they're Catholic. quote Francis. So we found this beautiful quote from Francis. I'm going to read it because it's translated, and it's obviously he's not a native English speaker, but this is what it says. You can see the effects of climate change, and scientists have clearly said what path we have to follow. All of us have a responsibility. All of us, small or large, a moral responsibility. We have to take it seriously. We can't joke about it. Each person has their own. Even politicians have their own. That's a profound thing to see on a chairlift. It's tying together what Walter Pepke was trying to do. And then we link to Protect Our Winners, which I'll talk about later, and then our company, which has information, and then the Yale Center on Climate Communications. Okay, again, this is how we should be thinking about the problem. This isn't the way to solve it. So what do you do? How do you think about it more? Well, we said, what power do we have? Well, we have advertising campaigns, and every year in the entire ski industry, every ad is the exact same thing. Go look at a ski magazine. It's skier on a powder day in a great clean uniform or outfit, and they're skiing. And it's like, are you kidding me? That's like advertising beer with a can of beer. It's totally uncreative. It is not differentiating your product. And by the way, in the West, we learned through market research, if you come here, you assume the skiing is going to be good. So you don't need to advertise that you have good skiing. That's why you're here. So we said, what if we did something totally different? What if we abandoned skiing entirely and we did a campaign on climate? And what if here's a problem in American society that was true for years. Elected officials, senators and congresspeople could deny climate science outright, or they could do token things and declare victory, and nobody criticized them at all. Nobody. So we said, what if we start to change that, 2017? And so we picked 3 swing senators. One was Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, Susan Collins in Maine, Rob Portman in Ohio. And we wrote funny notes to them. So that card, which you can't read, it says, Lisa Murkowski, you're not doing enough on climate, but you've got ski in your name. I mean, totally goofy. So the campaign goes out. Hundreds of thousands of prepaid postcards go out. Lisa Murkowski, you need to do more on climate. It drops. That day it drops. Mike Kaplan's phone rings. Ding. Lisa Murkowski's office. Pissed off. Really pissed off. Why was she pissed off? Because many of you may know this, but the White River National Forest, all the fees that come from recreation here, they go into like the national coffers. They don't go back to the forest. Murkowski was working on that bill, helping us, because we care about that. And then she's like, what are you doing? You're attacking me. So, of course, the next phone that rings is mine, and this is my career story. What is it? Auden, why is Murkowski's office calling me? Well, it's the ad campaign that you approved. So, but here's what was going on. This was one of the first instances where an elected official felt political pain for climate inaction. And if you think about what has happened since then, think about the Inflation Reduction Act 7 or 8 years later, the most important climate bill in the history of the world probably. Why did it pass? Well, it passed in part because when Joe Manchin was the swing vote, he got hammered by Bill Gates, by ski resorts affiliated with Protect Our Winners in West Virginia, by other business people. It was the first time there were consequences for saying no on a climate bill. And then he agrees to vote for it, and Kristen Sinema in Arizona. Same thing happened to her. It all started with us and others that were saying, you need to feel political pain for not being progressive on climate. Okay, did this do anything? No. Again, I'm not saying this is the great thing. This is the beginning of a movement, and that's what we're talking about, is a social movement. And then we had another, we've had kiosks where you could write the same thing, so you're a guest and you're waiting for your boots to be fitted or whatever. Write a letter to your senator. What are we trying to do? We're trying to make you a citizen. And we're going to talk about this a little more later. We've forgotten what it means to be a citizen. This is hard work. It's brutal. Some of you in the audience have been in elected office. You know how hard that is and how thankless. Okay, so again, what I'm doing here is I'm giving you ideas of how to think about this stuff and how to do it efficiently and how to wield power. So another example is this study which showed up in the AP, which basically said climate change is hammering the ski industry. The AP, it goes all over the world. This is a massive, some of you PR people in the audience could tell me in millions what this is worth. What did we spend on it? We got a call from a climate researcher at the University of Waterloo in Ontario. He said, I want to do a study on that. Will you fund it? I was like, yeah. How much? You have $6,000? Yeah, I got $6,000. $6,000? Are you shitting me? This was millions of dollars in norm changing. This is norm changing. People are reading this and they're saying, oh, there's a thing I love. It's skiing. And it's threatened. $6,000. The argument I just made to you about the complicity of corporate sustainability, I was just with a guy last night named David Fenton, who was one of the organizers of davidfentonactivist.com is his website. He's one of the organizers of 1979 anti-nukes concert working with Springsteen. He's a legendary ad guy. He saw this. This is on a napkin holder at Buttermilk. We have it on chair lifts too. He said, that's the most radical thing I've seen in corporate America on sustainability. And we put this up and we got lit up by a CEO in the community of a major corporation who's doing conventional stuff and did not like it. And I went to our CEO and I was like, that guy didn't like it. And our CEO said, too bad. Okay. So if we were a ski resort and we really cared about solving climate change, before the election, the presidential election, we would have intervened. And we said, we got to do that. Almost no corporations did this. A little bit Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, and us. But if you cared about climate, you could not let Trump win. Don't care about your politics, that's the truth. And we said, but if we do a social media campaign around climate, aren't we just going to around Trump or Harris, aren't we just going to alienate people? And the answer would be yes. So we said, how would we do it if we didn't want to alienate people? So we did a research project. We called League of Conservation Voters. We talked again to Yale Program on Climate Communications, and we did an online poll just to kind of crowdsource the answer. And what we got was the Trump voter hates being condescended to and being treated like they don't know what they're doing. And so we said, here's the campaign. If your mind's already made up, we respect you as a citizen and as an individual and an agent of your own decision making. But if you're on the fence, may we submit that climate could help you make your decision. And we did this in a social media campaign that rolled out to states like Pennsylvania and Michigan where we have gas, and we were able to target that. And it didn't work. But the climate problem, if you talk to people who have really thought about this, like Bill McKibben, the climate problem requires, there's not a silver bullet to solve it, it's silver buckshot. And the analogy I use is a bar fight. If you're in a bad bar fight, this doesn't happen in Aspen that often, but if you're in a bad bar fight, you got to innovate. You got to try stuff. So you might flip a table, you might run, you might throw a bottle, you might knock other stuff over. You're trying stuff. And in the climate movement, we very much are doing that. We don't know the answer. We're trying things and sometimes things catch fire. There's Bill McKibben in Aspen. There you are, right? Yeah. No, I can see I'm closer. Your eyes are open. So yeah, you bring the greatest environmentalists living and you get a huge crowd. But actually, ski resorts and communities have the ability to convene people. So look at that crowd. You know who that's for? That's for Jim White, scientists from CU. And then I don't have a picture of this, but last year, some of you were here for this too. We brought in, get ready to be bored, the head guy in the world on fossil fuel subsidies, government fossil fuel subsidies. And I was like, this is going to be a snoozer. We might have 15 people. The room looked like that. It was incredible. And so this is another opportunity. Okay, another example. Corporations that care, they lobby for action on climate. Great. It doesn't do anything often. We got an opportunity a few years ago when Hickenlooper was governor. He said, hey, Auden, do you want to be on the Air Quality Control Commission that makes state policy on climate? And I was like, yes, sir, I do. And my company said, Aspen One said, okay, actually, no one ever gave me permission for this, I have to tell you. I just did it. But I'm going to go down once a month and make climate policy. And there I am on the far right, obscured, incredibly bored, very difficult work. But in my tenure, and not because of me, but because of what was going on, we passed the first zero-emission vehicle standard in the central United States. The target was 12% of cars sold by dealers would be EV. Last month, we hit 26%. That's a big victory, and that's a big chunk of the climate problem. We passed rules on hydrofluorocarbons, which is a huge issue, refrigerants, and then we passed the strictest rules on methane in the United States, methane leakage. So that's incredible, but it's not what you think. You think of a corporate sustainability director as changing light bulbs, building green buildings, doing reports, and cutting carbon footprint. This is policy. It's totally different. Okay, so another example of that, and a question that was asked by Protect Our Winners, the group that Aspen One has been affiliated with for a long time, was how come the National Rifle Association, which had 3 million active members at its peak, 5 million total, how come it won in Washington? And how come they won when the outdoor industry, which at a minimum is 40 million people, wields no political power? And part of the answer to that is the outdoor industry is different from the NRA constituents. If you're a climber, a hiker, a skier, or other form of dirtbag, you're checking out of the political process. You think about Chenard in his early days eating potatoes and living under a truck. He wasn't in it to vote. So if you're able to mobilize that constituency, you can flip elections because those are new votes. There's some evidence we did this in the 2018 John Tester race in Montana. And again, I don't think POW did it, but there were constituencies, including Patagonia, working on this. That's the vision of POW. Weaponize the outdoor community as a political force on climate, and that's citizenship. This is POW in Washington. I submit to you that the expression on the faces of Hadley Hammer, one of the best American skiers, and Angel Collinson, who's been on every cover of every ski magazine, while talking to Ted Deutsch, congressman from Florida, about climate change, I submit that those expressions have been seen before by this audience. You saw it when Elias was chopping wood. That's human thriving, because these are people engaged in a task greater than themselves that will improve society and that will help endow their lives with old ideas that humans have always aspired to, like grace and dignity. The two stories I'm not telling tonight that are very cool, and they're in my book, are how we were changing light bulbs at our company and realized that it wasn't doing enough because the utility was buying more coal. And we said, oh, we got to change the utility. And then the question we asked was, what is a utility? How does it work? How is it governed? 10 years later, we're able to, with participation of many of you in the community, flip the board of the utility, put in a CEO who is a climate scientist. Right now, Holy Cross Energy, which powers all our ski mountains, is 90% real renewables, not transactional renewables, real renewables, with a 100% goal by 2030. And part of the way we did that was by running part of the human species known as women who had never been elected to the board before. And our company did the ads, so we just donated that time, we donated my time, we did the design. We lost elections, we got in trouble in the community, got yelled at, it was unpleasant, it was uncomfortable, and we got it done. Part of this story, and part of what I'm talking about is, if you're on a TED stage with a thin microphone, I realize I am on a stage, giving a talk, you're probably not driving that much change. But if you're scared to go into the annual meeting of Holy Cross Energy because you think someone will strike you, you're probably doing something. And so the climate work is often seen, and there's a lot of Silicon Valley energy around, but it's seen as, oh, we're going to innovate our way out of this. No, we know how to solve climate. You know what it takes? Hard work, citizenship, trench digging, the hard work of democracy and of deploying some of these technologies. Another story I'm not going to tell is how we boycotted Kleenex and, along with 700 other people, changed how a multinational corporation practiced forestry. Again, when I signed up to be an Enviro guy, I never thought I'd be involved in an international boycott where the CEO of a $20 billion company was talking to Mike Kaplan, and we were complaining that they weren't using post-consumer waste. And we had multiple conversations. At the time we were doing this company was not that profitable. So we were meaningless, but we were Aspen, and that was our power. And per that picture, Barry Lopez is so amazing. But this is what, in part, people are looking for, and this is part of the gratification that we can find. By the way, I'm almost done here, so I want to not bore you and leave room for questions. But part of the challenge in this fight is that the climate science that I presented tonight is terrifying. This is the scream. But do you know that this famous painting is someone responding to a scream, not screaming? I only found that out recently. Here's the problem. You and we are being asked to be part of saving civilization. Not save the planet. Planet will be fine. Save civilization. And if you're like me, your response should be, oh, you got the wrong guy. You should see me trying to get out of the house in the morning for a morning meeting. I was recently on a Zoom, and someone on the call said, did you just crawl out of a dumpster? And I'm looking at myself, and I understand why you're saying that. I leave my house, I forget my keys. I come back, I forget my lunch. I can't get out of the house. I barely sleep at night. I wake up, I got to pee 3 times. Like, I'm not Jackie Robinson or Rosa Parks or FDR. And you all know what I'm talking about. You can barely get through the day. You're not a superhero. And yet, history is replete, is full of people who had no power at all, who drove radical change. If you don't know this guy, it's Mohamed Bouazizi, who set himself on fire. He was a Tunisian vegetable vendor. He was so frustrated with the governance and the way he was being treated by the street police, set himself on fire, and he started the Arab Spring. And he died. It was a great tragedy. And the Arab Spring was a failure. 14 years, nothing happened. And then Syria fell. And then Iran was hammered because of Syria falling. And who knows what's going to happen with Russia? You can't see around the corner of history. And so the job we have in front of us is, in a lot of ways, it's an impossible job. Because if you think about the forces against us, especially now with a Trump administration, whatever you think about it, they don't care about climate that much. And so one response is, I give up, this is impossible. But another response would be to say, let me think about what we do well as human beings. What are the stories we like to tell ourselves? Well, I submit to you that John Steinbeck said, we only have one story and we tell it over and over again. But the story we tell ourselves is about a battle against impossible odds that we never win. You don't believe me? Have you heard of a book called The Bible? What other stories do you like to tell? How about The Lord of the Rings? Remember at the end when Sam and Frodo come back to the Shire? What was the state of the Shire? It was destroyed. And Tolkien himself said that it's a story about the persistent return of evil that you cannot defeat. What other stories do you like? Harry Potter. Same deal. And if you really want to get erudite, Beowulf, where the great hero at the end of Beowulf dies and leaves his people unprotected. And the reason these stories resonate with us is that this is what we do. We fight impossible battles. What's the big one? Mortality. And so throughout history, we've taken these things on. We're meant to do it. Cormac McCarthy said, all things of grace and beauty, such that one holds them to one's heart, have a common provenance in pain. So all important things are difficult. The philosopher Reinhold Niebuhr said, nothing of any importance can be achieved in your lifetime. Okay, so here's what I'm offering, or what you're being offered. It's going to be hard, and it's going to take forever, and you're not going to see the fruits of your labor. And your response should be, that's what we do. Bring it on. This is awesome. Okay, so last two slides here. I always end with this slide. This is Raphael's painting of the Genesis story of Lot and his family escaping the burning cities on the plain. The story goes that God said, that town's full of sinners, like this town, and I'm gonna, present company included, and I'm gonna burn it down, and you can go, Lot. You're my friend. You get out. And just one thing, don't look back. So no one less than God said, don't look back. And Lot's wife looks back and gets punished for violating God's order by being turned into a pillar of salt. Kurt Vonnegut writes about this story. He says, so she turned around, she looked back, and she was turned into a pillar of salt. But that's why I love her, because what she did was so human. And if you think about what she did, you're leaving the town that's behind you, where you grew up, you dropped your kids off at first grade, you met your wife, you got married, you had your house and garden. Of course you look back. It's the most human thing you could possibly do. And so I submit to you that climate is similar. You're being presented in whatever you do, because every job is a climate job, with the opportunity through your work on climate to endow your life with some of the oldest aspirations that in human thought. Again, living a graceful life, living a dignified life, treating your neighbors as they would like to be treated. The idea that is consistent among 18 different religions and philosophies. And so I submit, you can't help but do it. That's it. Thank you. So now I shamelessly plug my book. And the reason I do is that if you look at the cover of this book, we're going to do Q&A, and the way we're going to do it is you ask a question, I call on you, and I answer it quickly so that many people can get their questions in. If you look at the cover of this book, it's beautiful, right? The earth is kind of screwed up. Someone graffitied it, and someone thought it was a good idea to put a flower on it. So it's kind of messed up, and it's neon. The earth's not supposed to be neon, but it's beautiful, and that's the world we live in. So this book, if I said to you, hey, if someone said to me, hey, I got a climate book, Auden, I bet you're excited to read it. My answer is no, I don't want to read it. I've read them all. I'm bored by them. They're scary, and they're not interesting. This is not that. This is about family and parenthood and life. So buy it, explore. If you like it, review it on Amazon. And it's incredibly difficult to sell books, so I would thank you for that. Okay, so with that, we will now proceed to, what do you got? Questions, thoughts, comments, criticisms? Don't be shy. Gary.
You didn't do enough, Elias.
I have that, but I cut it because I did it in Carbondale, and all the crazy people came out.
So the quick question is what is the one thing you want me to take away from this to be able to say to somebody, why this book?
Oh, you're asking me how, it's like I planted you in the audience. You're asking, I thought you were going to say on climate. Okay, why this book? Because This book is actually fun and interesting to read. And it's about climate, and look, if you really want to know, it's a takedown of modern environmentalism, and it's meant to be a stake in the ground the way, I'm not like these people, but the way Walden was, the way a Sand County Almanac was, or the way Silent Spring was. That's my aspiration. I'm not saying it fits into that canon. But that's the hope. It's also fun. The first sentence is about 3 guys chasing a dust devil in the desert. So it's not what you think it is if you're worried about a climate book. Thank you for that planted question, Gary. Yes, that's guaranteed. What else? Yeah.
I had an interesting experience in the last year. I was trying to get, oh, thank you. Can you hear?
Yep.
I was trying to get Dennis Hayes, who is a college friend of mine, who started Earth Day with that senator from Wisconsin. Gaylord Nelson, thank you. And I wanted to get him to come to Aspen and speak with Amory Lovins. They're friends. And I thought that would be interesting for the Explore bookstore. He wrote me back an email, and it took me by surprise. He said, I'm living in Seattle, and I'm running a not-for-profit up there, and I can't remember the name of it. I think it begins with a G.
Bullet Foundation, continue.
Yeah, that's it. And he said, and I'm trying to keep my carbon footprint low, and I'm not traveling.
Okay, can I answer from there?
Yes,
I get what you're saying.
I mean, I thought it really turned my head around a little bit.
Okay, so here, and this I will take a little longer on, even though I'm trying to answer these questions rapidly. But one of the great critiques of you as a climate activist, or us as a corporation, who are you? How do you heat your house? Oh, natural gas. Do you like that natural gas? Yeah, I do. It heats my house. How did you get here tonight? I drove my gas car. Ah, you like that gas car? You're guilty too. Okay, but very quickly, here's the history of energy in the United States. 1900-ish, call it. That's oil around 1920-ish, 1910, whatever, in Pennsylvania. So Americans said, wow, fossil fuels are great. We want services provided by fossil fuels. That includes hot showers, cold beer, refrigeration, house heat, mobility. We want those services. We want those provided as cheaply as possible. Society says, we got something called coal. We dug it out of the ground, lit it on fire. It's amazing. It's free from the ground. And it was amazing. Undisputably, fossil fuels brought 1 billion people out of poverty. They saved lives, and they were incredible and beneficial. Thank you, fossil fuels. 1950. Scientists say, oh my gosh, we got a problem. It's basic physics. When you combust fossil fuels, they put CO2 in the atmosphere. It's why we can exist, because we have some CO2 in the atmosphere. It keeps us warm. You can't overload it. Okay, 1950. 1977, ExxonMobil knew exactly what was happening. They said, it's going to warm 1.3 degrees by 2020. It warmed 1.3 degrees by 2020. That's what you say to the people, oh, climate models don't work. They had a supercomputer the size of like the town of Aspen, and they did the calc, and it was right on. Okay, so what if, and this is so timely because Jimmy Carter's funeral was today. What if we had said in 1977, just when Jimmy Carter was saying we should get 20% of our electricity from solar by 2000? What if we'd said, you know what? Very slowly, we're going to take 50 years. We're going to slowly get off fossil fuels. We don't want to disrupt any economies or anything. We'll do the research and development. We'll do it in over 50 years, actually 70 years, because we knew about it in the 60s and the 50s. And we did that transition. But we didn't do it. We dawdled for 50 years, maybe 75 years. And the reason is that the fossil fuel industry knew exactly what was going on, and they said, better to monetize all that stuff. And so we're going to inject disinformation into society. Some of you in the room may not even believe climate change is real. That's brought to you by the fossil fuel industry. We're going to create campaigns whereby people take blame for the fossil fuel problem themselves. 1970, the Crying Indian campaign that said, litter is your fault. And then 2004, BP launches the carbon footprint. Carbon footprint says it's your fault. But you don't live in a fossil fuel economy. It was created for you without your control, without scientific input. It's not your fault. The only obligation you have, and let's talk about Aspen now, our obligation is to do everything we can to change that whole economy. And if you want to criticize the company, you could say you're not doing enough. I think that's a fair criticism. But that's how we have to be operating, and that's how you fight the hypocrisy, which is to say, I'm trying to change the system. If there were a carbon tax opportunity in the United States today, our company would 100% support it. We already have. Okay, I took a long time on that because it's so important and it kind of weaponizes you. But let's do a couple quick other ones. If you have to leave, you won't insult me. But are there other quick, anything? Yeah.
We want to get this message out to those who are the movers and shakers of the world. I'm curious if the book is in every room at the Lil Nell, if it's in the Limelight rooms, if it's in our Four Mountain Sports shops, if we're using that to put it in the public.
Yeah. Yes, so we're printing a custom version of it with an introduction from our CEO that will be in every hotel room, not just here. We're not selling it. Four Mountain Sports is a mess. It's like gaiters, not a mess, but you can't put a book in there. It's like, I'll have a gaiter and a pair of gloves and a book. I'll just put that on my ski jacket. Good though, but the question you're asking actually we've struggled with and we're open to input. How do you reach those people? So we got a great criticism recently from a guest in Ketchum. I checked into my room and I couldn't find a Bible, and all I found was this environmental propaganda, which was our sustainability report. I was like, yes, this is incredible. No disrespect. No disrespect intended, but we were doing that for a reason. What else? Yeah, Annalise.
Have you found that there is any difference in the communication that resonates with corporate leaders versus with average citizens, plebeians, those of us in this room?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle because I don't feel we've gotten through to corporate leaders. Here's my theory of change and a ray of hope. My theory of change is that one corporation that's bigger than us is going to lead, and everyone else is going to be like, oh my God, that gave them incredible PR, brand recognition, leadership. It didn't cost anything because it was just a statement. They didn't have to actually do anything, but it was important because they changed social norms. What if Apple did it, or Coca-Cola? And then people follow. Here's an example from the modern world on this. Costco, you guys know this, but all these companies are like DEI, diversity, justice. Screw it, we don't care anymore. Costco gets an initiative from a right-wing group saying, drop it. Costco's board of directors says, we're not going to drop it. You know why? Because we're better off with different ideas and different people. And they've been widely praised. If you Google this, they're just through the roof. And the reality of Costco, it's not like they're a radical company. They're no Patagonia. But they just did something that is only primarily getting them praise. And the CEO knows this. I emailed the CEO because I know these CEOs just get criticized. Saturday morning, I email the CEO of Costco. You see how my life, you should go on a bike ride with me. And I say, look, I know how hard this is. I know how you get criticized. This was amazing, good job. 20 minutes later, he's like, thanks. Here's why we did it. That's an amazing company. And those guys are going to thrive because of that. They're one of the best managed companies in the country, and that's why. What else? Yes.
You do kind of like three companies, Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, and Aspen. Are there any others kind of on the fence with maybe trying to follow this lead, or how can we nudge more in this direction so there's more than 3 companies, or maybe can we get Apple or Coke or Amazon on board?
So Moz is an environmental leader in our company, ski instructor on the board. You've done as much as anyone can, so thank you for that. Another thing we're going to be doing at our company is, again, when we boycotted Kleenex, Kleenex listened. So next up is Coke. And we're just going to say, look, someone from Coke in there. A few years ago, I said, maybe we'll get rid of bottled water. Phone rang. Ring. Hi, Auden, it's Coke from Atlanta. What's your favorite restaurant? I do like Campo de Fiore. We'll see you there tomorrow night. Tomorrow night! And they're like, oh, we got to recycle. Recycling, not eliminating plastic. So we're going to pressure peers. So you were asking who's on the fence. I think we pressure whoever we have leverage on. We work with Salesforce. Salesforce is one of the most progressive corporations on climate that still pays dues every year, $250,000 to the US Chamber of Commerce to undo climate legislation. How can you call yourself a climate leader when you're paying an organization that has opposed every piece of progressive legislation in history, including civil rights? That's a problem. So we're going to go to them. That's my next thing I'm going to do. Yeah, you should. Let me just end here, and then you can talk to me individually. Let me end with a kind of an aha moment in terms of what you can do. So years ago, we went to Scott Tipton's office. Tipton was the predecessor to Boebert, and we went to Tipton in Grand Junction, our office, on behalf of Aspen Skiing Company at the time, and we said, why aren't you doing more on climate? And Tipton said, do you know how many people have come in this month asking me that question? And I said, let me guess, nobody. And he said, that's right. Why do you expect me to act on this if none of my constituents are asking me about it? So that's interesting, because one way for environmentalists to be is to shake their fists at this guy. Why aren't you doing more? But he's representing the people. And it's hard to go to Grand Junction to talk to an elected official, but you got to do it. And so if everyone in the room did it independently and separately or wrote an actual letter, suddenly he's getting hey, what's this all about? We're getting this pressure. But there is no pressure. And this is a failure of citizenship in America. We forgot that it takes work. Again, if you've been on town council, it's so hard. You don't get anything done. People are mad at you all the time. That's the stuff I'm talking. Ward, look at you, man. Okay, thank you for coming. Thanks for what you're doing.